I suggest I introduce both of you first, and then at the same time, Paola will be connected, and we can formally start the last webinar of the exhibition. I believe that Chiara or Martina will start to speak about the three books. Some information about Chiara Cavalieri. Chiara is an architect and urbanist. She has also a PhD in urbanism at the UAV University of Venice. She's currently professor of urbanism and territorial management at the University of Catholic of Lausanne. And she is also member of the steering committee of a Metro Lab Brussels and Louvain for cities. Over the last year, she has collaborated and taught in the field of architecture and urbanism at a number of different international schools, including UAV in Venice, Graduate School of Design in Harvard, EPFL in Lausanne, ITMO in St. Petersburg, and also in ENSAP in Lille. She coordinated and directed several research activities and regional visions, such as the Horizontal Metropolis, a radical project, the Blue Space, Aero Metropolis, Lille Cortic, Tournai, the Language of Water, Green with Gray, among others. She's currently developing water and landscape urbanism research through transboundary city territories, with a particular focus in mapping and representing the related territorial dynamics. After Chiara, we will have Martina Barcelloni Corte, who has also a PhD in urbanism, and she is architect and professor of landscape urbanism at the Faculty of Architecture, University of Liége. She has been scientific coordinator at the Habitat Research Center and scientific collaborator at the Laboratory of Urbanism at the EPFL in Lausanne. She collaborated with international architecture offices and taught in the field of architecture, urbanism at international school as EPFL, UAV in Venice, Polytechnique of Milan, and also at the Columbia University, and as well in National University of Singapore. She's currently carrying out a research project on urban rural soils. Please feel free to start at your best convenience, and Paola will join us in the middle, I believe.
So thank you very much, Andrea and Gianni, for the invitation. It's nice to be here, to have the occasion to discuss, even briefly, part of this work. Today we're going to present three books in between me and Martina, and I will try to put the story of these books in a chronological perspective, let's say. And I would like to start from the 9th of October with this image, the 9th of October 2015 at Archizoom Space in Lausanne, where we were building for the first time the Horizontal Metropolis exhibition. So this is 3 days before the opening, and this is the very first image that we have. It's the very first time that the exhibition has been built. It was not complete as it is now, but it is in the same moment, in this very same day, we had the opening of the exhibition. We also had the opening and 3 days of discussion over a symposium about the Horizontal Metropolis. So as today is the finissage, I believe this is a theme you really discussed through so far in Horizontal Metropolis Hong Kong. So at the time, in 2015, we did a call for paper for discussing all together a worldwide condition, the one of the fusion and the one that we called a possible horizontal metropolis, a condition of horizontality, let's say, to be in a way. So on those days, we discussed 50 PhD paper with over 32 discussants from all over the world. In this slide I put, it's very small, but it's nice to have just a glance of how much material, how many people, how many research, how many discussion we had. And there is also the QR code for you to download the proceeding, because I noticed that the site we built at the time is not in function anymore. So we had this series of discussion with the PhD, which was very interesting, around three main topics of the Horizontal Metropolis. We wanted to discuss the contemporary condition of the space in a way. And we wanted to discuss first as a space that required a transversal and interdisciplinary discussion in, for example, with ecologists, environmental, hydraulic engineers, or landscape architects. Then we wanted to discuss the horizontal metropolis as a space which has a metropolitan force, as a space where to invent new governance strategies through the collaboration of different stakeholders around the big table of the metropolis. The third and the last part was the idea of discussing the horizontal metropolis as a theory, or better, as a series of theories, and to discuss together how these theories have been influenced each other over the last decades of the 20th century. For closing the symposium, there was a large round table, and there was a continuous back and forth to this exhibition that finally was open. So this was 2015. As you know already, the exhibition enlarged, traveled to Venice in 2016, the following years. And in 2016, a few months before, has been exhibited also in the Biennale of Lugano in Switzerland. Sometimes we forgot because this was a bit small. So the result of that discussion that we had in Lausanne, the 3 days in Lausanne, has represent the context of this first book, the first of the three we're discussing today. So the book is called The Horizontal Metropolis Between Urbanism and Urbanization. I would like to spend just a few words on the subtitle. The Urbanism and Urbanization is the title of a series of PhD seminars that have been organized through many universities, among them UCLouvain, Venice, UCLouvain, UPC Barcelona, UGent, and TU Delft. Have been organized over the years, and this in Lausanne was the 8th edition. This book has been presented in the 9th edition, that is also the last one, that was in Ghent in February 2018. I continue with the chronology. 2018, this is at the beginning of the summer. In June, the Horizontal Metropolis opened in Beaux-Arts, enlarged. So as you can see here, the models start to change, let's say, at least relation with the ground. And the exhibition enlarged with the 3 different case studies in Belgium that were mirroring the 3 different regional conditions, the Flanders, the Brussels, and the Walloon condition. The specificity of this exhibition is that we started with the model that were just status quo of the situation. And then during a workshop, during the exhibition, we completed with the students with a sort of project projected into the models. So the content of the exhibition that I decided not to detail that much because it's been the object of the exhibition in Hong Kong and object of previous discussion are not all of them, but most of the materials of the Horizontal Metropolis has been collected in this book, which has been published in 2019, the Horizontal Metropolis, a Radical Project, edited by Park Books. At the very end of 2019, finally, it has been a long trajectory. We managed to collect the materials, and the book is another way of looking through these materials. So as you know, but maybe I repeat quickly, the Horizontal Metropolis proposed to look at this condition throughout 5 case studies throughout the world. There were occasions of different teaching experience and research experience. So in Boston, in Lausanne, in Valais, in Venice, in China. And finally, the book proposed to read through these case studies with different tools, I would say. We proposed 3 tools of reading. The first being images. Images of people and places, interview and role views that Martina will detail later in her intervention. So I will skip. Second tool being cartography in a way. And through cartography, we try to have an understanding of the different scales of these cases, because the cases are very located, but then we look at the metropolitan scale, 50 kilometers, 10 by 10 is a scale where we try to merge description and project together. Each case study has been observed, designed, drawn, mapped throughout common themes, very simple one, for example, this one, like almost morphological themes, and throughout different scale. So this allowed us to have a certain capacity of comparative reading throughout the cases, but also on the other side, each case had specific drawings, specific investigations, specific representation that were prior to their design. So this is just an example of the one of Lausanne. So this cartography, as you know, have been collected in some atlases, which are with the exhibition, but then the translation of these materials into the book require a different kind of manipulation, because of course the atlases had a different size, a different status, and also a different way of being observed. The third tool are models. Model that express projects, 5 projects, 5 investigation in 5 different conditions of diffusion and then horizontalities. And I wanted to discuss with you the reference of this model. So I assume that everybody here have seen the exhibition. So the exhibition proposed 5 models which are mirroring the Broad City of Frank Lloyd Wright. So this model has been exhibited in Rockefeller Center in New York in 1935. And it's a model which pictures 2 miles per 2 miles of territory, American territory, of course, at the scale of 1/275 inch to feet, which translated to normal scale, normal to European scale, I'm sorry, it's 1/877, which is close to this 1000, very, very urban design scale, very, very detailed. But what is important for us here is not only the module, so this 2 miles by 2 miles or 3.2 kilometers, but it's the scale in the sense of the size. So this model is 3.65 meters per 3.65 meters. So this model designed in the exhibition a space of discussion, a space of observation, a space that is able to gather different people. So what we did is throughout the 5 case studies to produce 5 images, which are not completely modeled. Sometimes there are mixed in between model and axonometers, but at the right scale, at the same scale, with the same model and the same scale of Frank Lloyd Wright. So these 5 objects are 3.65 meters per 3.65 meters. So here, for example, a nice collage. This was Tommaso Pietropoli that did all the collage on model on top of the base. Tommaso Pietropoli did a lot of work for this exhibition. I think it's worth to thank him again. So this is showing the superposition in between model and base. But I would like to spend the last 5 minutes that I have at my disposal for trying to understand together, how do we get to this kind of combination, to this size, to this model. And I wanted to look at some a backward chronology of this process. And now, because these are the final product, but there are also experiments underneath, a bit in the backstage, but which are very important for understanding the result that we had in 2015. And I would like to start with this image. All good? I hear a bit of noise. Still good?
Yeah, it's Paola.
Okay, good. So 2012, a student of an option studio that Paola Viganò was giving at GSD Harvard started to observe the periphery of Lawrence in Massachusetts through the model of Broad City. And this is, at the left is a sketch, and in the right is this grid, which is trying to verify the very hypothesis of Broad City, the very hypothesis of the living city, the fact that we could observe a piece, a complete piece, without any criteria of selection of metropolis throughout this measure, this model. I will call the 2 miles by 2 miles models now. So this is 2012. The following summer in 2013 in Venice, we observe a different model. We observe 1 kilometer by kilometer, and we produce model of 1,000. So nor the model nor the scale are the same, but we started to approach a certain dimension and a certain gaze of observation, let's say. One more semester, again, GSD Harvard. I was working with Paola at the time in 2013. And there we picked the model again of Brodeix City, and we investigate two, which are the two here on the left, but we represent them at another scale. So the two, neither of the two are the exact space that is represented in the final Horizontal Metropolis exhibition. The one that we represented is something in between, is this big square here. But what the student did at the time were representing the two pieces at a different scale, so smaller, they were 5,000, so an object of 60 centimeters, and then to pick up some points and design them at the scale of Brodeix City and 877. So here we have the model, but not the right scale. We have some pieces of the scale. The next semester, we have some theses, which again, try to investigate the same model, but they represent it at a different scale. So this is a model of Campo San Piero. It's more or less the same frame that we used, that Tommaso Metropoli used for his master thesis then in Venice, which is the one in the exhibition. And this is, let's say, a first trial. It's a model at the 2,500. So we have an object of 1 meter. And then in the same session, other students did a wonderful Brodeix City on the alluvial plain of Verona. And they changed scale again. They arrived up to 2,000. So this model was 1.5 meters, and was a beautiful one. So the same model again, a different scale. Now we're getting there. 2014, there is one workshop more in between the story that I didn't put because I couldn't find the image. 2014 in Lausanne, we finally managed with 120 students and Paola, me, Martina, and many others assistants. We produced 3 Brodeix City, and we produced 3 mix merging of plan and models. What is important here is on the left is that there are more tools that exist, which have not been selected, of course, for the sake of synthesis, but they exist, which are one on the lake. This is the first on the first plane, and up in the hills of the periphery of Lausanne. But then that scale, that dimension, produce a space, collective, common space, where we could discuss together. The next semester, with the very same protocol, a group of bachelor students with Paola, Roberto Sega, Marine Durand at EPFL produced 2 Brodeix City. One on the left is the one which is in the exhibition. If I understood well, one of the masterpiece of this model has been lost in one of the travels, so it's not as it used to be before. And this one on the right is another one which is not be selected, but very beautiful, very nice drawing, very nice design proposal on the plain of Lugano. The other, the exhibition 2015, the same year, in the evening, in the end of the summer, Tommaso Metropoli did defend his master thesis, and his master thesis is on almost complete model of Brodeix City at the right scale. It is exactly the one of the exhibition. And then the last one, the Chinese case, has been produced for the exhibition in the framework of the PhD thesis of Qinyi Zhang, with supervision of Paola Viganò. Voilà, we're at the end of this very small trip from Lausanne to Lugano, Venice, Beaux-Arts, Schengen, Hong Kong. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Chiara. Very clear and amazing sequence of the image that confirmed this long genealogy of this project and a vision. Martina, you will add some more on the publication.
Yeah, I can follow with the third book. I will conclude this sequence of 3 books with the third one that is in print at the moment. So it's not out yet, but it's sort of coming there. So ideally, this book will be published in November. So this year, it has been a very long and complicated journey, I have to say. Not only because of its heterogeneous and very diversified materials, but also because, of course, it has been part of a very sorry, I have a problem here. Okay, it has been part of a strongly evolutive also research, as you have seen from Chiara also. It began as a sort of small object, this anthology, and then it came out as a sort of very big one and heavy one also. In any case, the attempt has been sort of to launch I would say, a global and as much as possible systemic understanding of the formation of this very specific spatial condition that you know very well up to now. So the idea was also sort of identification of a tradition of research, recognizing this the formation of this different type of urban space as a sort of new subject of study. So as you know, many scholars of the city in time have over, let's say, for more than a century now, accumulated reflections, readings, and interpretation on what today here and also at Hong Kong we call this exhibition we call Horizontal Metropolis. And at that point, at the point of the start of beginning of this research, it seemed important to us to select them and bring them together, to bring together this legacy, so it could emerge with more strength in the debate, in the urban debate, but also in the ecological and socioeconomic one. So digressions through, of course, very different moments in time are possible through this anthology. Of course, we are dealing with what we call prophecies and anticipations, but we will see this in a minute. But also very different supports, I could say. So letters, manuscripts, books, journal articles, many different materials, but also very different geographical and cultural milieu that let emerge different influences and exchanges among the different authors and among different ideas, but also relationship with concrete situation and interpretation. So this sort of double relation was very important to us. So also interpretation on one side, but on the other, concrete situations, observed by the author. And thus a sort of new geography sort of start to emerge, physical, but also cultural. And we could say, in a way, a different way of conceiving urban history, sort of designed by case studies and authors together. So as Paola also sketches very, very in a lucid way and rapidly, or even if rapidly, but lucidly in the introduction of the book, we would say that the first aim of the project was to sort of bring this tradition to the surface. And here with tradition, we mean what we consider sort of important and crucial in the development of the new design images and tools around this idea. So on this first level, we're not really interested in establishing really strong continuities or unique or linear sort of continuities and paths. The idea was more to shape a sort of digressions, a series of digressions and variations on the theme, which despite the fact of having sort of different origins and coming out from different situations and different political and cultural contexts, came together in a sort of common lines of force. Yet, of course, maintaining the differences. And of course, these are researchers that often developed without a sort of broad vision of other coheval contributions. But they, as a whole, sort of try to demonstrate the existence of common interpretative trajectories. So that was really something we were looking for. So we really, it's important for us to say that it was not a question of inventing a tradition, but sort of enhancing the existence of these convergences through the tool of the anthology. So the second aim was the idea of framing a genealogy. So the difference between tradition and genealogy was quite important for us. So in this case, in the case of the genealogy, the idea was to track stronger connection between elements. So to follow sort of families of ideas and tracing these lineages between different positions. In this case, some of text may seem sort of indigest, so a little bit also outdated in some times, but belonging to eras of the past. But then when we go through them, we understand that there is this emergence of new forces and tensions between different logics that's sort of undergoing transformations. And this looks quite rich, I have to say, and capable of structuring new debates. So the core of this genealogy, of course, was originated by the authors around the group of authors that worked on their sort of books, on their texts around the 90s. So from this sort of core, we started to work on these genealogies, from which the reconstruction of familial lineages originated. So the third, and let's say maybe more important, maybe not, but I think it is for me. I mean, it's quite the most intriguing one, is the gaze towards the project. So the idea to pave this way towards a new kind of project, pursuing the reflection on new urban forms. So because this research into the roots of the horizontal metropolis actually draws from ground-based explorations, where sort of definitions emerge from deep analysis and understanding of specific situations, not only in Europe, but also in other countries. And this, I think, it's a great contribution for what now is for us today the project on these territories. So it gives a lot of tools also to build this project. I have to admit that we had also some moments of, I mean, we're exhausted in some moments, but in others we're quite excited and even wonder, because finding out, for example, that some of the works that we were looking into were produced really practically in the same year by authors living far apart from one another in very different continents, and that didn't even know each other. So there were some moments that were really, really nice. But to go very rapidly through the book, just to give you a sort of idea of how the structure of the book works. So it's made of 3 parts. So while the second part that we sort of saw before contains the most, for us, of course, representative and influential group of authors that worked between the 60s and the 90s, let's say, and we will see it in a moment. The first one sort of anticipates the emergence of this extended and territorial situation and represent a sort of glimpse into a remote past and in visions. So it's something really different. On the contrary, the third part sort of reflects on the present, so on the present day, and looks and has a gaze towards the future. So the 3 parts are very different. So let's go through very rapidly the first part that we called prophecies and clues. And also, so there is an anticipation word that was quite important also to us. So prophecies and clues, the idea here was to highlight its sort of open and visionary character of this group of authors. And it examines some of the sort of great texts that have anticipated the recognition and also the interpretation of this horizontal metropolis or city territory, or how we want to call it. But here we have this sort of visions that are sort of start to come out. And the opening, I mean, the first chapter that you see here is dedicated to Jean-Jacques Rousseau's letter. So the letter he wrote to the Marechal of Luxembourg, where he announced already in the mid-18th century a sort of very particular reading of the Swiss territory as one single large city. So already there you can see that this sort of visionary aspect is sort of emerging. Of course, for him, as for the others, it was a matter of having a very particular capacity of seeing things, seeing territories, of sort of reading between the lines. And in his case, he was sort of transforming the Alpine meadows into a sort of collection of English gardens. So an expression of culture and civilization, so something really different. And he was sort of seeing this and was sort of trying to transmit this idea. There you have this visionary character, this sort of prophetic, nearly prophetic element coming out. So each text is introduced by a short abstract, a sort of small introduction, that normally is prepared always by the scholar that have come into terms with the author in question, that has a sort of knowledge on the author. And the aim of a small abstract introduction is to contextualize each text and relate it also to the main hypothesis of the horizontal metropolis. So texts here, and it's quite important, are always nearly or almost always accompanied by illustrations, which in many cases do not percolate from the same publication, but come from other sources. So this is another big work that we have done. As for example, in this case, where for Kajanov's Land of Peasant Utopia, we introduce some graphic elements and illustration from another very important essay of his author, so that the theory of peasant economy, where the theory of peasant economy is discussed, and his reasons of dispersion are discussed in sort of critical terms. So same author, more or less same years, but a sort of another source. Or, for example, fragments of newspapers or archive photos that sort of nourish the vision. In this case, for example, Brodecker City, first appearance in the New York Times article, or through its famous model that you can see here. Okay, so second part. So this was a sort of first sort of collection of visions and prophecies. The second part, on the contrary, is a sort of core of the work, of the book, and of the research also in a way, and is also the place where the journey, our journey started. So it's really the sort of center of the research. And here we can say that, as I was mentioning earlier, most representative and influential authors for us, I mean, which produced their work between 60s and 90s, proposing this new gaze on the city. So the connections between this part and the first part and the second part, in some cases, are really strong and are quite interesting. As for example, in the case of Marcel Smets, that he uses he connects to the anticipatory thought of two great references that we have in the first part. So Sieben Roundtree with Land and Labor, and Émile van de Velde with Exode Rural et le Retour au Champ. So he sort of recalls to those authors in his text. So there's a nice connection between the first and the second part, very clear in some cases and more sort of implicit in others. Or, for example, André Corbeau, with quotes many times, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, visions on several occasions. So the textual structure of the second part is quite similar. It's very similar to the one of the first part. We still have this sort of abstract introduction to contextualize text and to connect them to the main hypothesis. But in this second part, the iconographic section is, I would say, it's more rich, it's more developed, also because we have more accessibility to materials. In fact, we did not limit ourselves to collecting the sort of most important images and diagrams of the different authors, which often were already inside the original version of the text. But as in this case, for example, with Notthingham and the Patchwork Metropolis, so it's already inside the text. But in many cases, we expanded this thickness and try an understanding. Also, we tried to do this work, as in this case with Roundtree's diagram on railways, where this is an example, we have sort of approached a contemporary to the text content railway map, which sort of accounted for a spatial confrontation to this diagram. In other cases, we added materials from other sources that the author didn't publish at all, but which in their research was strongly referred to the same concept of work, that they use, materials that they used but they didn't publish. Here, for example, we have unpublished materials from a lecture from Nuno Portas that has been inserted to sort of better understand certain other illustrations on different scales. But it was also important for us to sort of testify how certain type of territory was gradually being represented and transformed also in the imagery of scholars. So sort of images with their sort of strength at a sort of imagery level. So diagrammatically and with particular style, with a sort of very particular style that would later have a very strong influence also on legacy, as for example in this case with Indovina's work on the Veneto. But also we wanted to witness sort of various attempts to render these territorial conditions that in a diagram form, for example, in different sequences and with different sort of hierarchies were tested. Here we see, for example, the work of Jean-Michel Roux on the French evolving and growing villages. Or again, another type of illustration, the attempt of looking at differently at the territory, including new elements in the analysis. So the author's personality and their research on various levels, including iconography, sort of gradually emerge, as here we see Secchi with his work on La Spezia and his particular way of representing the territory. But also, yeah, as mentioned earlier, so the iconographic materials are found outside the mother text, but this makes also possible to construct sort of sub-genealogies, and I'm almost finished, sub-genealogies within each individual research group. As in this case, for example, where to illustrate Picinato's work towards a new city, we have taken an illustration from a master thesis by Mariano Sartore, for which Piccinato was supervisor. So Sartore then will continue to work on the teams, building a sort of new research trajectory, but his illustrations illustrate very well Piccinato's work. Very rapidly, other non-published materials. Here we see students from Branzi, Domus Academy, same years of the emergence of agronica, working on the concept of agronica, images never published. Or a personal archive of the author. Here we have André Corbeau and his own lectures being built from its own pictures taken by himself, archive of Mendrisio. Or again, text for a lecture conference that the author did on the topic. Here we have city territory, again, it's Corbeau, with interesting also notes on the margin. To close the presentation, third part, the smallest one, but also very interesting, dealing with present and future. So here we have the return of some authors from the second part. So again, this connection between the parts is very strong and quite clear, I have to say. At the end, while we were inside, it was not so clear, but now these bridges are come out quite well. Where we did a set of interviews to a selection of authors. In occasion of a series of conference we organized at EPFL, we did invite all these authors that you can see here in live, and during the same winter, in one winter, we invited all at EPFL, and we did interview them. So we listened and questioned them one by one on the sort of, with the same sort of structure. And we asked the authors to tell us about their work in perspective, so what they did at the time, but at the same time to look at the present and the future, so how their sort of ideas were useful for the future and for the present time. And there you can you have an emergence of testimonies that allow us to sort of penetrate the author's thinking in a very different way and with a different look towards the future. And some of them take up really this prophetic character, as for example in Branzi, that is sort of looks to the future with a sort of prophetic character, the same sort of air that you could feel in the first part. Very different structure in this part. So we have this sort of faithful transcription of the interview at the beginning. And then at the end of each chapter, we conclude with a series of maps, new maps produced ad hoc for this book, in which we have tried to sort of very briefly show the territory described by the author at different scales, but especially in 3 moments in time. So the first time is the territory before the rapid changes occurred, in black. You see it here, for example, in case of Schwechenstadt. From the 60s. The second was the territory at the time of the author's description in gray. And the third was today in red. So this allowed us to sort of observe what the author described. So the first transition, and then what came after him, and which he sort of talked about in the interview. So a sort of second transition. Same territory also is described as also in the catalog and in the exhibition from different viewpoints, from above and below. And in many cases, as in this case, for the German territory, we did with previously unpublished material. So we did, again, new flights with drones, new pictures that are not seen in exhibitions until now or in publications. So to conclude, this is my last slide. So the ambition was and is today to sort of nourish and fuel the emergence of a new kind of project, the Horizontal Metropolis one. For the moment, this book, after this book, the result is a sort of incomplete, of course, portrait of an ongoing research. But yet there is, I think, still a strong, we think, potential also to be sort of completed, modified, and transformed into maybe another project. But thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Martina. Thank you. The anthology seems to be extremely promising, and I believe Paola would like to add some words. Perhaps we use the phone approach.
Sorry for the difficulties. I'm in fact in the Horizontal Metropolis, and you know the Horizontal Metropolis seems to be designed and built, so there are still some holes, also in terms of connection and accessibility. And I'm also close to a church, and today I think it's Sunday and it's midday in this moment, so all the bells are okay. It's finished. I have appreciated the intervention by Chiara and Martina. I think they both show the depth of research that is since many years now being developed. I would like to maybe just point out some, in a synthetic way, some of the main points we considered important. Okay, sorry, it's midday and everything is ringing and. Okay.
But we hear you, Paola. Don't worry.
Okay. So first of all, I think that it's 3 books make clear that the urban scene is far beyond the peri-urban literature or even the suburban literature. In fact, we address closely interlinked and symbiotic space, and by doing this, we can work at the same time on ecological and social and spatial issues. The main hypothesis about horizontality concerns networks, ties, relations, and of course we understand more and more, or at least I understand more and more, that by putting horizontality and the horizontal relations, ties, and networks to the fore, we are working on different types of structures that I've tried to define using some terms of the postmodern discourse in terms of weak structures. I don't know if it is clear at this point, but if you insist on horizontality, you have to work on also weak part of the territory.
Yes.
And I think the task we have now is really to make this evident, reveal and start to design and realize those horizontal ties. I think we have to start their construction. It is the construction of a new infrastructure that has been peripheral, say marginal, not really at the center of our preoccupation. In the modern era, the modern project was not putting enough attention to the weakness of the territory, but only to what could become extremely strong, directive, authoritative, organizing through hierarchical, let's say, systems, the territory. Now, if we want to work on horizontality, we have to work on weaker aspects, and that's for me is the first result of this of our research. For example, in this moment, I am in the Great Geneva, so around Geneva in this non-horizontal metropolis that we would like to bring to let become more horizontal. And we start in this one from ecosystem services in a way to figure out a new type of infrastructure that is at the same time ecological, social, and maybe, why not, also economic infrastructure. The point is that we have to understand if this new urban ecosystem is can offer proof of being sustainable. And we have to work, of course, on the idea that the horizontal metropolis is also, at least partially, but in to a very big extent, a renewable resource. The horizontal metropolis also is a vision that tries to give a coherent frame to many of our current preoccupations that are not only ecological, but they are also social and political. For example, about the demarcation between richer and poor areas. That was one of the last books that Bernardo Secchi wrote. It was about the raising of the emerging of this demarcation. So I think the horizontal metropolis offers a perspective and a vision about growing demarcation, but also about some fundamental doubt we have about the ecological transition, how to reorganize the territory. Do we have to centralize more, or do we have to decentralize more? Are we going to reframe the reflection that was made during the modern era, and also not so far away from us during the 60s and the 70s about decentralization? Is decentralization or decentralized infrastructure more efficient in terms of the ecological transition? And are they more also efficient in terms of the social transition? Take, for example, the aging of the population, or maybe the confinement in which we have been all going through in the last 2 years. Is it more interesting to have all centralized, or should we go back to a decentralized project? And also the question of unbalance. Are we looking through this idea of horizontality also to a new equilibrium among the different parts of the territory? As you see, these are all the concepts for urbanism, but they have been framed differently in the past. And on this plurality of meanings that we find inside the theme of horizontality, we have now in this moment, I have a PhD student, Tommaso Pietropoli, that is also working exactly trying to reframe this genealogy. Finally, there is the idea of the radicality of the project. So we are designing the metamorphosis. And I want to bring you back, it's a quote that I put in one of my texts in the 3 books. Ludwig Wittgenstein, speaking of a painter, a friend, about the concept of pure white. No, pure white. You cannot reach the pure white, but you can always imagine that you know what it is, although you have never seen what is pure white. And I think that the horizontal metropolis is a little bit this, and the painter, the friend of Wittgenstein, would say, although nobody has really seen pure white, in the ordinary, in the common language, in the common discourse, you speak of pure white. I think that the horizontal metropolis is something like that. It's like pure white. We can never really say precisely or in all its dimension what it is, but we all know that there is something there. And And let's say the Horizontal Metropolis for me is a kind of pure white. And I think that here in this, in containing something extreme, and that's also something that the friend of Wittgenstein was underlining, it is in the ordinary discourse, and sometimes it comes out in a kind of extreme way. So we think that this is also the type of research we have made without exactly knowing, because it is an hypothesis, exactly know where we are going to arrive, but containing a series of extreme scenarios, extreme visions about these new forms of coexistence that are tested in space as a social system in action. Here again is a quote from Weber about rethinking the urban domain as a social system in action, so a dynamic system. Because there is a problem in this horizontal metropolis. When we want to make of horizontality a true project, a true vision, there's a question also of redesigning the spatial structure of the metropolis. And this is why we insisted in the books, and especially in the second one, the one about the Horizontal Metropolis, a radical project, about the role of new figures of space that can be used to reinforce this horizontality of relation in space. I remember the moment in which I saw in front of me the research all together in all its elements. And it was in 2013. So we had already discussed and made research starting 2010 on Brussels, on the vision for Brussels with Bernardo Secchi and others. We had already started to make some tests, as Chiara showed, with the students. I remember also the GSD when I was fearing to be considered a little bit eccentric and eventually also a little bit ingenious by working again and again on Frank Lloyd Wright square of 2 miles by 2 miles. I was really thinking that maybe from that perspective, being already in the US at the GSD, this could really look like a crazy idea. And so having already tested and making experimentation that were not completely satisfying, but always very, very intriguing and very interesting. So it was in, I think it was in the end of August of 2013. I was starting at that moment also to teach in Lausanne. So I wanted also to start with a program, with a research program. And at a certain moment, I understood that to go deeper on this idea of horizontal metropolis, I needed to crystallize in three different parts. So the one that finally became the anthology, so showing the emergence of a tradition and trying to go through certain genealogies. The second, affirming strongly the possibility to design horizontally this new type of urban condition. And the third, to share this launching debates, eventually proposing a research protocol as we did. And at that moment, for me, it was very clear that the three aspects had to work in parallel, and in fact, they worked in parallel. Although the books took time, and the last one is still to be published, to be out. Although it was for me the first step to recognize that we were working on top of giants. As we used to say, we were not the first one, we were really on top of giants, and it was important to show all that was before us. About this emergence of a tradition and the time we needed to make the books, we have to remember that in the meantime, other books came out that were in a way going a little bit around or going through this theme, I want to remember the book edited by Neil Brenner about the planetary urbanization, starting from the Henri Lefebvre hypothesis of 1970s about the planet becoming fully urban. So this book was out, I think, in 2016, probably. And we were already, working on the anthology. As you probably know, the book of Neil Brenner also contains partially is an anthology, is a series of manifestos, etc. The second book we intersected is the book edited by Alan Berger in 2017, Infinite Suburbia, and also there is this attempt to refresh the debate. In this case, it's more oriented to a collective debate about the future of the infinite suburbia that characterize all the planet. So these authors and these two books were very present to us when we were doing our work. But the need for the anthology, in any case, remained because the questions of the tradition and of genealogy were extremely important, especially, I would say, the tradition. Because we were not on the point to invent a tradition. Maybe you remember the beautiful book by Osborne about the invention of a tradition. We were not inventing, but for sure there is a big margin of interpretation. So we put together with a certain freedom. I'm sure that many of the readers will see that there is not everything. So it's not exhaustive. I think everyone will have the idea that, oh, why there is no this text? This should also be interesting. So let's say that maybe in some years there will be a new edition with a new text to be added, following also the suggestions that the readers will bring. So it's not exhaustive. It's a very clear and strong interpretation. So we take also the risk of selecting some texts and not others, and also the risk of being incomplete. That was necessary because otherwise this book will never come out because in fact there is an infinite tradition. But so the margin of invention, there is a small margin of invention, but not so big. And we think that in this moment it is nevertheless important to take this risk because what Osborne is writing in this book is that there is the attempt to invent a tradition, to bring a new tradition, when you have to overcome the old tradition. And we think that today we are in this moment, we have to overcome an old tradition, let's say kind of common sense around the urban project, the urban and territorial project. So we have to invent a little bit a new tradition. So in that sense, there is a margin of interpretation that we take as a author of this selection. About the second point, the possibility to use design. So the second book is dedicated to really put strongly in the current debate that sometimes is very shy in terms of what urban and territorial design can do. So we wanted to bring this statement about the capacity of design to deal with these big topics through radicality. You cannot imagine to work on the current issues related to urbanization without a certain radicality. And this radicality is part of the topic. The topic itself is quite radical. Now the change we are going through is already radical, and we try to tackle this radical moment through radical tools and hypotheses. And the last point, so the need to create a debate, kind of forum for debate. was realized through first the big symposium that Chiara remembered at the beginning, but also through the exhibition, because the exhibition proposed a research protocol, and we wanted to launch this research protocol, and not only to debate by using words, but also to debate by using research operations. And I'm very happy, I have to say, of this. Of course, again, this was an hypothesis. We didn't know if this could work, but we tried. So we said, okay, let's not only create some moment of debate, but also to create conditions to have a debate that can regenerate itself, because there will be always new elements related to new context, new people, new students, eventually be inside this debate. And this protocol that in this moment has been used by Gianni Talamini especially, and we hope also by Andrea in the next future in another Chinese case, but that has been used in the case of the Hong Kong exhibition, I think shows that the idea of starting from a common protocol and then, of course, elaborating and adding new elements. I mean, the protocol is less rigid, as I already said at the beginning of when we launched the exhibition in Hong Kong, is less rigid than a method. So it's just a common understanding about how we should do certain operations, so mapping operations, maybe the common measures given by the model. These very, say, small things or important, let's say, things can give the possibility at a certain moment, and I hope that maybe in one of our next discussion we can really start a little bit this comparison, because now I think we have really a lot of case studies. In the meanwhile, as Chiara showed, we also had the Belgium Horizontal Metropolis with 3 new cases. Now we have Hong Kong, and maybe next year we will have something in China. So I think that this shows that the materials can be eventually put one close to the other and start to reflect on both context, design. So are we testing something that is interesting, and what do we learn from this? But also discourses and putting, say, concepts close one to each other. So to conclude, and I don't know if it is already the starting point for the conclusion, the conclusion of the exhibition, and then I think that Gianni, Andrea, and Luke Qinyi maybe can continue. So from my perspective, to conclude both the presentation of the 3 books, but also to conclude this 1 month of seminars, debates. I could not follow all of them, but some of them, yes, and they were extremely interesting. And to conclude also the exhibition, I would like to say that the Horizontal Metropolis research rests on a rich and fertile ground bed of ideas. So not only inside the anthology, but also through this protocol, let's say, this common protocol of research. And I think we can rely on this. It can continue its work as a shared protocol for spatial investigation, which I think is really very important in this moment, because we are going through similar questions everywhere, but with clear different conditions, economic, social, cultural conditions in the different parts of the world. And eventually, and this is for me the focus of my actual, let's say, preoccupation, it can contribute to the deconstruction of the actual biopolitical project, and contribute to the elaboration of a new biopolitical project. So for me, this reflection is still at work, is still, let's say, useful. And I want to thank Gianni Talamini and Andrea Palmioli to have taken, let's say, the risk to continue, and not just to repeat something that was said in the past, but really to add a new context, to open up to new people intervening in the different webinars, and to bring students to reflect on a different context on those themes. So thanks very much also to Martina and Chiara for having been with me for all since 2013, let's say, till today. And I would like to give now the floor to Gianni or to Andrea or Qinyi, as you prefer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paola, for your comments and also for closing formally the exhibition. If Martina or Chiara wants to say something, otherwise I'm happy to add some comment about the result of the exhibition in Hong Kong of the Horizontal Metropolis. Perhaps, first of all, I would like to really thank you for having initiated this fantastic work and created this methodology to inquire territories across the world and finding a common ground of theoretical question and also questions that need to be addressed spatially and practically through design and through an increase of interdisciplinary debate. And also, I think it's fundamental to thank, and perhaps Gianni will do it more comprehensively than me, all of the people involved in the realization of this continuation of Horizontal Metropolis in Hong Kong, which have immediately welcomed with enthusiasm these ideas to challenge a shared vision of Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area, but especially Hong Kong as a dense and vertical city. It seems at the beginning that Hong Kong would have been not suitable for, inquiring the horizontalities in that context, but in fact, we come up across a very interesting array of situation and debate about the horizontalities. And what I would like to say is that what seems to be emerging in the Chinese context is a dualism, a contextual dualism, which has a historical, cultural, political reason, which unfolds back in a dynastic time. And this dualism can originate disconnections in some cases, of course. This disconnection is something that we have observed. If I refer to the Mio-Drag presentation, for example, as well as others in the megalopolis, which seems to be the result of course, of a multiplicity of stakeholders, but also embody a technocratic political vision which is planned for the collective. It seems sometimes to be detached to the appropriation of the space. On the other hand, if we think, for example, the contribution of John Lin and others, of course, the countryside appears as an idea, a place of individual actions which neglects some kind of collective or communitarian vision. These are two deliberately generalized ideas in which in between we have, of course, a constellation of a different situation that confirm somehow the agency of open space as an agent of transformation, which give coherence to the idea of horizontal metropolis. And this idea of open space as an agent of transformation, which is acting differently in those contexts and somehow connecting those contexts, has been explored in the webinar session, Radical Ecology, Symbiotic Urbanism, and the territory session. What I would like to briefly add about the open space, that it seems to have been described during the previous debate as a common sphere of ecological reappropriation in the horizontal metropolis, and also it acts as well as a catalyst of design action intended to reaffirm first, synergic and collaborative ways of transdisciplinary understanding of representation of mega-urban regions. So it really identifying a new language to really how we represent, how we design, how we understand the complexities, but also and they very much surprised about the emergence of a new vocabulary of a cultural, also poetic and aesthetic narrative of spatial reappropriation. And I think of the work of Hohoffi, among others, also the aesthetic that they've been forwarded in the symbiotic urbanism first session. And ultimately, as well, it confirmed this intermediary agency of a persisting evidence of opposition. So the open space is still again in between this opposition, which is still remaining cultural, bureaucratic, political, and social. And in my opinion, a further contribution on the methodology and the discourse on the horizontal metropolis is to really add a common language which is capable to catalyze all of this opposition into a new, if you want, kind of discourse, which is disciplinary, which means for architect and designer, but as well is again a interface for a broader understanding. Thank you. If Gianni and Qinyi would like to say something, please add some personal comment.
First, I would like to congratulate that the wonderful exhibition and the webinars that are, for the part that I had the opportunity to participate, I really had learned a lot, and I also see the incredible interest and passion that from every participants on this topic. And I'm very, as a Chinese, I'm very interested in this version of Horizontal Metropolis, the work you have done on Hong Kong, but I'm also extremely interested in the next step, that the opportunity to potentially bring also this format, this methodology, this research to China, because I think as part of the research of Horizontal Metropolis, we were looking at China. There was a part of the exhibition also dedicated to the Chinese case and the Hong Kong case. And as Habitat Research Center and LabU in EPFL, we also went to China for research exhibitions. And we see that the change in paradigm is really urgent in China now. We have been tried a lot of paradigms in the past decades, but still for this moment, the city-centered paradigm is still the predominant. And we see that the incredible, let's say, risks of following this line for the past decades. And we see how also on one hand, the potential of the territory in reconcile this risk and to imagine a different type of development. So I'm personally really looking forward for this next step.
Thank you.
So it's my turn now to conclude, and it's actually the time for thanks, as we're running out of time, and but also some final remark if I can. I'm very glad to be part of this and to be in a way able to, as Martina was mentioning, to nurture and to fuel this process and this nomadic movement of this notion of horizontality through different spaces. And in this stopover in Hong Kong, which took us a lot of effort, but it was also very rewarding under many different aspects. The exhibition was made in three parts. One was actually the Horizontal Metropolis A Radical project, in which we added one element of this exhibition, so the Lam Tsuen Valley in Hong Kong. One part that the one that have seen the exhibition enjoyed was on the ground floor of the city gallery, which was Horizontal Hong Kong a paradigm shift, and this was like a sort of more deep reflection on this territory in the case of Hong Kong, bringing different kind of materials and also working as a living lab in which we have been confronting different kind of ideas and in which we have had some opportunity of workshops and interaction, as well as an integral part of this exhibition were the webinar, as Andrea was mentioning. So all this came together in this quite hybrid format, I would say, which is normal nowadays, was not normal a few years ago, but it was normal nowadays. So we make full use of the different opportunities that we had as well. Yeah, I think that was a very important event for Hong Kong, definitely very important event for the City University of Hong Kong, and definitely also for the planning department, that I would like to thank, first of all, on top of all, the partners that we have into this journey, because since the first moment that we approached them quite a long time ago already, they opened us their door and they welcome us. So we want to thank them a lot, particularly Margaret Zhang, that has been once more very kind with us and offering the venue and answering positive to all our requests. So that was an important component, I would say, because it gave us a stage that is very central in Hong Kong, and a stage that allowed us to show this idea and to exhibit this idea in front of many different stakeholders, starting from the planning department itself and the planners that works at the planning department itself, to the general public to visit the gallery on daily basis. We want to thank CTU, definitely, and also the Indra and Banga Gallery of City University for supporting this event since also the very beginning. And also a big thanks goes to EPFL and to Nottingham University, that has been in partnership with CTU developing this world project, and also giving the resources, putting the resources into this work process. Another important thanks goes to the Consulate General of Italy and the Consulate General of Switzerland that have been supporting this exhibition, and the Design Trust of Hong Kong, and as well as the Research Grand Council of Hong Kong that has been also funding and this partially funding this exhibition. Another thanks goes to Hong Kong Timber Bank that provide us with these wooden elements that were integral part of the exhibition. And finally, to the Drainage Service Department and as well as to the Hong Kong Institute of Urban Design and Hong Kong Institute of Landscape Architects that has been promoting this event through their channels and gaining a lot of interest from many. So another thanks goes to all the students and all the ones that has been collaborating since the early beginning till the last minute, the last day, the last night, working day and night on this. There are hundreds of students, not only at CTU, that has been involved into this project. And so it's going to be a very long list, but we thank them in our website. And so you can have a full list of names there and their also role in this and contribution in this event. I would also like to thank Andrea that has been sharing this project with me since the beginning, and in the last month and a half, particularly in very intensive working time and working periods remotely from Ningbo, but present basically on an everyday basis, and discussing with me about any every decision that concern not only the webinars that he has been leading, but as well as all the exhibition here in Hong Kong. So we have been really working tightly together in this, and as well Christina Kaiser, that has been coordinating the whole exhibition delivery, but as well as an installation, but as well as curating the ground floor sections here at the City Gallery. And a big thanks goes to also Yusong Zhang, that has been co-curating this exhibition, but particularly focusing on the webinar series together with Andrea. So I would like to thank her as well. And then finally, I would like to thank Paola, first of all, as well like Chiara, Martina. Very glad to be part of this and to be in a way able to, as Martina was mentioning, to nurture and to fuel this process and this nomadic movement of this notion of horizontality through different spaces. And in this stopover in Hong Kong, which took us a lot of effort, but it was also very rewarding under many different aspects. The exhibition was made in 3 parts. One was actually the Horizontal Metropolis A radical project, in which we added one element of this exhibition, so the Lam Tsuen Valley in Hong Kong. One part that the one that I've seen the exhibition enjoyed was on the ground floor of the City Gallery, which was Horizontal Hong Kong, a paradigm shift, and this was like a sort of more deep reflection on this territory in the case of Hong Kong, bringing different kind of materials and also working as a living lab in which we have been confronting different kind of ideas and in which we have had some opportunity of workshops and interaction, as well as an integral part of this exhibition were the webinar, as Andrea was mentioning. So all this came together in this quite hybrid format, I would say, which is normal nowadays, was not normal a few years ago, but it was normal nowadays. So we make full use of the different opportunities that we had as well. Yeah, I think that was a very important event for Hong Kong, definitely very important event for the City University of Hong Kong, and definitely also for the planning department, that I would like to thank, first of all, on top of all, the partners that we have into this journey, because since the first moment that we approached them quite a long time ago already, they opened us their door and they welcome us. So we want to thank them a lot, particularly Margaret Chang, that has been once more very kind with us and offering the venue and answering positive to all our requests. So that was an important component, I would say, because it gave us a stage that is very central in Hong Kong, and a stage that allowed us to show this idea and to exhibit this idea in front of many different stakeholders, starting from the planning department itself and the planners that works at the planning department itself, to the general public that visit the gallery on a daily basis. We want to thank CTU, definitely, and also the Indra and Banga Gallery of City University for supporting this event since also the very beginning. And also a big thanks goes to EPFL and to Nottingham University, that has been in partnership with CTU developing this world project, and also giving the resources, putting the resources into this world process. Another important thanks goes to the Consulate General of Italy and the Consulate General of Switzerland that have been supporting this exhibition, and the Design Trust of Hong Kong, and as well as the Research Grant Council of Hong Kong that has been also funding and this partially funding this exhibition. Another thanks goes to Hong Kong Timber Bank that provide us with these wooden elements that were integral part of the exhibition. And finally, to the Drainage Service Department and as well as to the Hong Kong Institute of Urban Design and Hong Kong Institute of Landscape Architects that has been promoting this event through their channels and gaining a lot of interest from many. So another thanks goes to all the students and all the ones that has been collaborating since the early beginning till the last minute, the last day, the last night, working day and night on this. There are hundreds of students, not only at CTU, that has been involved into this project. And so it's going to be a very long list, but we thank them in our website. And so you can have a full list of names there and their also role in this and contribution in this event. I would also like to thank Andrea that has been sharing this project with me since the beginning, and in the last month and a half, particularly in very intensive working time and working periods remotely from Ningbo, but present basically on an everyday basis, and discussing with me about every decision that concern not only the webinars that he has been leading, but as well as all the exhibition here in Hong Kong. So we have been really working tightly together in this, and as well Christina Kaiser that has been coordinating the whole exhibition delivery, but as well as an installation, but as well as curating the ground floor sections here at the City Gallery. And then finally, I would like to thank Paola, first of all, as well as Martina, Chiara, Qinyi, for initiating this and for letting us being part of this and letting us contribute and help this idea to move forward and possibly to expand in different areas of the world. So that said, I'm also looking forward to see the next step in Ningbo, and that is going to be curated by Andrea. And yeah, it has been an amazing time. Thank you.
Thank you.